plugin of the week is the noveltech Character, brought to you by Plugin Alliance. The noveltech Character is a unique plugin that is a dynamic processor. It is based off of psychoacoustic research and technology. They use a method called intelligent adaptive filtering, which brings in the process of filters and dynamics to help shape the character and sonic characteristics of a sound. What's cool about this is that it works uniquely based on the input material. So whatever it is that you're feeding in, if it's changing, then the noveltech Character plugin is also adapting accordingly. So the algorithms are quite complex, and what they do is they allow the responsiveness of the plugin to stay consistent regardless of how the material is kind of moving along. Now, what you'll have here is on the basic settings, what you have is an input and an output level control, and that's pretty straightforward with overload lights for each. The character control, which determines how much of the effect you want to add in. There's a target. The target basically determines the frequency area over which you will be applying the processing. So this will shift based on the actual plugin or the input source. So it generally goes lower in frequency to higher in frequency, and you'll kind of see this. So what it'll do is it'll just bring out certain characteristics of the sound, and you'll kind of hear the filters sort of sweeping as you kind of move it and bring it in. And then there are three modes. The initial mode, the first mode, is particularly designed for percussion and vocals. The second mode is designed more for guitars and synths, and then mode 3 is designed for electric basses and pads. Although you can kind of shift them in different ways. So in other words, you're not necessarily stuck with that, like that's the only thing it would ever work on. You can actually go through them and you'll get some slightly different characteristics from the processing. What I thought I would do is I would just kind of put it on a number of tracks here. And we'll start with a few of them. What we have here initially is a kick drum. We'll just zoom out a little bit so we can see it and leave this open enough so that we can also see the plugin. See if I can get that balanced. That looks good. And let's start with just the kick drum plugin. So this has no processing at this point. Now you'll notice that what I'm doing here is I'm placing this prior to the other processing. So what noveltech says in their documentation is that it's better to apply this processing prior to other forms of processing, so that if you're over limiting or doing other forms of processing, it may affect negatively what's going on here. So let's bring up a little bit of character here and let's see what it does on a kick drum. So what you'll see here is I shift a target. You could actually hear the filters kind of sweeping. So if I want to use this to kind of bring out some of that low end, and I can sort of mix that in. And bring out some of that character, right? So this is like percussive stuff. We also have a clap. And we could do a similar type of thing here. And then I can also bring in some hi-hats. And so what I have here with just this initial group of processing is something that changes like this. And what it's doing really, when it starts to work with the different components, the fundamental idea of working within different frequency areas, you hear those sweeping frequencies, or the idea of it, and this is kind of primarily the way that you really listen for it, is the solidity and the imaging that you hear and the focus that you hear of the individual sound. There's also obviously a little bit of gain that's added, and I could compensate a little bit for that. But looking outside of that, when you listen to the component elements of what it's doing, it's focusing a sound, making it more listenable, making it so that your brain can actually say, yes, this is a hi-hat and it's located right here. And that is most of what mixing ends up being about, is like getting something so that it images so solidly that you feel that it's right there. It starts to escape the speaker. And that's sort of the effect. So whether you're kind of working on a kick drum and you're trying to bring out more of the attack or more of the resonance of the low end and getting that to sync or image well, that's the basic idea here. So let's shift to something else a little bit different here and go on to a bass. So here I could work with maybe work with something that's on 2, which is designed a little bit more for synths. And you'll see how much of the processing, so there's very little processing going on here. And let's so maybe if we want to bring out a little bit more of the sub. Get that to image a little bit better. See if I can find something else that would be good. So we could kind of pick a couple of other bits here. So here's like a simple keyboard part. It works in multi-mono. It's a mono component. So let's go switch this to the keyboard setting here. So you could hear how like it images so much more clearly. Like there's just a sharpness that's sort of brought in that you don't have before, and that's the basic idea. So there's a series of components here that do similar things. Let me just kind of, that they all basically work together. Oh, that's a stereo. That's why it didn't work. So let me just kind of bring that up here. So I'll just work on the guitar on the left. And then do this other one here. And then I have another one that's like just a component on the right. And maybe as I kind of wind these all together. So maybe I need to take out a couple of these other components here so I'm not killing other elements in here. And we can kind of get the full imaging of what I want to do. There we go. Without. So obviously there is a bit of a gain addition issue there without going into getting into all the detail of that and tweaking that all perfectly in. The basic idea, the fundamental idea of the plugin is there. And it's sort of a trend that you're seeing more and more. You see more plugins that are being designed where you don't necessarily know all the details of what's going on under the hood, but you get the results of something that would be akin to having a very advanced knowledge in use of audio gear, where you would have to, rather than having to sculpt something from the beginning and really try to, do it with perhaps tools that are too blunt, you have something that is far more intelligent and adaptive and can kind of respond to the original signal, and you have a simplified interface that allows you to get to those different characteristics or imaging components that you're looking for in order to kind of focus your sounds into place. A very cool plugin. And a very unique one. Very simple, easy to use. There's also an A/B store so that you can compare. Just simply store a setting into the B side. You can make adjustments on the A side and then go back and forth between the two different settings. Pretty straightforward plugin and a really cool one. Interesting one to have in the tool bag. The noveltech character brought to you by the Plugin Alliance. That's the plugin of the week.